I was stuck in a love triangle that nearly ruined my life. I used to believe that some people are just meant to be in your life forever, that no matter how much life shifts or people change, there are certain bonds too deep to break, that they're part of your story like your own heartbeat. For me, that person was Ethan Reynolds. Ethan had been in my life since I was 10. He lived 2 houses down, the boy who'd climb trees faster than I could, the one who'd share his umbrella when we walked home from school and I forgot mine again. The kind of best friend who never needed to be asked for help, he just showed up. Always. By the time we got to college, we'd become something like a pair. Not a couple, though everyone thought we were, but an inseparable unit. We studied together, ate together, sometimes even napped in each other's dorm rooms when life got too heavy. He'd tease me for my obsession with vanilla lattes, and I'd mock his ridiculously neat handwriting. We were safe, balanced, comfortable. It wasn't romantic, or maybe I just didn't let myself think of it that way. He was home. And then, one day, the balance shifted. It started like any ordinary Friday. Midterms had just ended, and our campus had that weird, buzzing energy of exhausted freedom. Ethan and I had plans for our usual Friday night ritual. Pizza from Tony's, bad Netflix movies, and a blanket we pretended to share, even though it somehow always ended up around me. But that night, he got pulled into a last-minute group study session, and I decided to meet up with my roommate, Ava, who'd been begging me to go to a campus party for weeks. That's where I met Liam Hayes. He was standing near the makeshift bar in the backyard of the frat house, a red plastic cup in one hand, laughing with a group of people I barely recognized. He had that kind of laugh that makes people turn their heads, low, genuine, magnetic. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, and when he caught me looking, he didn't look away. He smiled, a small, knowing smile that made something unfamiliar stir inside me. I remember thinking, you don't know me, but it feels like you do. I didn't even realize Ava had dragged me closer until we were standing near him. She knew one of his friends, and soon we were all in the same circle. I tried to play it cool, but every time he spoke, I found myself watching the way his lips moved, the way his eyes seemed to notice everything. We talked, or rather, he asked questions, and I tried not to sound like a complete idiot. He was a transfer student, new to campus, majoring in architecture. I told him I was in communications. He joked that I probably knew how to win every argument, and I laughed more than I should have. There was something about him, confidence wrapped in ease. He made the world feel both smaller and more thrilling at once. When I got back to my dorm that night, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. Ethan, you alive? Did the party eat you? Me, barely. It was loud. Ethan, should have stayed for movie night. Me, next Friday, promise. I could almost hear his disappointed smile through the screen. And for the first time, I felt a tiny flicker of guilt. Like I'd broken a promise I hadn't even realized mattered. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about Liam. It wasn't love, not even close, but it was something new, something electric. And when I ran into him again, near the campus cafe a few days later, it felt almost faded. He remembered what drink I ordered at the party. Vanilla latte, right? He said with that same crooked grin. Wow, good memory, I replied, trying not to sound flustered. Hard to forget someone who laughed at my terrible jokes. We sat together and the conversation flowed effortlessly. Books, music, childhood memories. There were small moments when our hands brushed and I'd pull away too quickly. Heart pounding. That night, when Ethan and I met to study, I found myself distracted. He noticed, of course. Ethan always noticed. You good? He asked, eyes soft, pen frozen mid-sentence. Yeah, just tired. I lied. He looked at me for a second longer than usual, like he didn't believe me, but he didn't push. That was the thing about Ethan, he never pushed, he just stayed. But I could feel something shifting. My world had always felt steady, predictable, anchored by Ethan. Now it felt like someone had tilted the floor beneath me. Days turned into weeks. Liam started showing up more outside class, at the library, during lunch. He wasn't trying too hard, he was just there, in a way that made me feel seen in ways Ethan never did. One evening, he walked me back to my dorm and we stood outside, awkwardly close under the yellow streetlight. I remember him saying, "You have this look when you talk about things you love, like you light up from the inside." And for a second, I thought he might kiss me. My breath caught, not out of fear, but anticipation. But he didn't. He just smiled, shoved his hands in his pockets and said, "See you tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, heart heavy with something I didn't want to name, because naming it would make it real. Ethan came by the next morning with coffee, just like he always did. He knew my favorite order without asking. We sat on the grass outside the journalism building, the autumn wind brushing through my hair. "You've been quiet lately," he said softly. I shrugged. "Just a lot on my mind." He hesitated, then looked straight at me. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" And there it was, the familiar warmth, the safety, the comfort. But underneath it, a flicker of restlessness I couldn't shake. Because while Ethan made me feel safe, Liam made me feel alive. That realization scared me more than anything. I started avoiding talking about Liam around Ethan, but it didn't matter. He noticed the changes anyway. The missed hangouts, the shorter texts, the excuses that didn't sound like me. One evening, he finally said it. "You've met someone." It wasn't a question. I froze. "What?" "No, it's not like that." He just nodded slowly. "It's okay, Em. You don't owe me anything." But the way he looked away told me that wasn't true. Because somewhere between childhood and now, without me realizing it, we'd built something that wasn't quite friendship anymore, and I had just cracked it. That night, I walked aimlessly through campus, my chest tight. I ended up at the little park near the dorms, where Liam was sitting on a bench sketching something. When he saw me, he smiled, like the universe had planned it. "Hey," he said. "Rough night?" I sat beside him, the silence between us both heavy and comforting. "Do you ever feel like you're ruining something good without meaning to?" I asked quietly. He looked at me, eyes thoughtful. "Sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same." We talked for hours about regrets, fear, dreams. He told me about how he transferred because his old school was suffocating him. I told him about Ethan, not in detail, but enough. He listened, really listened. And when I got up to leave, he touched my hand gently. "Whatever you're scared of," he said, "you'll figure it out." That should have been comforting, but instead it made my heart ache. Because in that moment, under the dim park light, I realized I wanted to stay. Over the next week, I kept telling myself I was just being friendly, that there was nothing wrong with talking to Liam. But the way my stomach fluttered every time I saw him said otherwise. Ethan, meanwhile, started pulling back just a little. The texts became fewer, the smiles tighter, the silence longer. One night, after another study session that felt awkward and heavy, he said quietly, "You don't have to pretend, you know. I just hope he makes you happy." And that broke me, because I didn't even know who I wanted to make me happy. That night, Liam and I ended up at a late night diner. We laughed over pancakes and talked about everything and nothing. And when he walked me home, he stopped at my door. "Emma," he said softly, "I really like talking to you." My heart raced. "I like talking to you too." He smiled, and for a second, time stopped. But before anything could happen, I heard Ethan's voice in my head. "You don't have to pretend." I stepped back. "I should go." He nodded, the disappointment barely hidden. "Good night, Emma." As soon as the door closed behind me, I pressed my back against it, heart pounding with confusion and guilt. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't the steady friend, the girl with everything under control. I was someone who wanted two completely different things, the safety of what I knew and the thrill of what I didn't. And as I stood there, in the silence of my dorm room, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I was falling for Liam. But a part of me would always belong to Ethan. And that's how the perfect balance of my life, the one I thought could never break, began to shatter. If someone had told me that love could make you feel both invincible and completely hollow at the same time, I would have laughed. But standing at the edge of what used to be my uncomplicated life, I finally understood what they meant. It wasn't a clean, cinematic kind of love. It was messy, quiet, and confusing, like being stuck in a storm that you helped create but didn't know how to stop. The weeks after that night blurred into a strange rhythm. Ethan and I still talked, still studied together sometimes, but the comfort between us had changed. There were pauses where there used to be laughter, polite smiles where there used to be easy jokes. I could feel the weight of things unsaid sitting between us every time we were in the same room. Liam, on the other hand, was everywhere. I'd see him on campus and try not to notice how his eyes found me in a crowd. We didn't spend every moment together, but somehow he was always near enough to make my heart race. We'd sit on the steps outside the library or talk about random things, music, philosophy, childhood. He had this way of making every conversation feel important, like he was storing my words somewhere safe. One afternoon, we were sitting in the campus garden, watching the last of the autumn leaves fall. He had a sketchbook open on his lap, drawing something I couldn't quite make out. "You draw a lot," I said, trying to sound casual. "What are you sketching this time?" He tilted the page toward me. It was a messy but beautiful drawing of the fountain in the center of campus, surrounded by the fading orange of trees. "It's not done," he said, "but it's kind of peaceful here." There was a quiet beat. Then he looked at me, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "You calm me down," he said quietly, almost like he didn't mean to say it out loud. I didn't know how to respond. My chest tightened, and I looked away, pretending to fix a leaf stuck in my hair. "That's nice," I muttered, but my heart was pounding too hard for that to sound believable. That night, I lay awake thinking about those words. "You calm me down." It was such a simple sentence, but the way he said it, like he needed me, tugged at something I didn't know was waiting to be touched, and the guilt that came after was almost unbearable, because I could still hear Ethan's voice in the back of my mind. The next day, I met Ethan for coffee. We hadn't properly talked in a while, and part of me hoped things would feel normal again. The cafe was busy, filled with the hum of conversation and the smell of espresso. Ethan was already there, sitting by the window. He smiled when he saw me, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hey," he replied. "How's everything?" "Good. Busy." I tried to sound light, but even I could hear the strain in my voice. He nodded slowly. "You've been different lately." There it was. The sentence I'd been dreading. Different how? He leaned back, his gaze searching my face. "I don't know. Distracted. Distant. It's like you're somewhere else when we talk." I wanted to tell him the truth, that I didn't know who I was around him anymore, that I was terrified of losing him, but equally scared of staying in this strange limbo. Instead, I said, "I've just had a lot on my mind. Classes, deadlines." Ethan smiled, but it was a sad smile. "You don't have to explain, Emma. I just miss us." Those words nearly broke me. "I miss us too," I whispered, though even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true anymore. We finished our coffee in silence. When we parted, he hugged me. Tight, lingering, familiar. And that night, I cried harder than I had in months, because I knew that while Ethan was holding on, I was slowly slipping away. Over the next week, Liam started opening up about things I never expected. He told me about his parents' messy divorce, about how moving from one place to another made him hate permanence. "It's easier to leave before people can hurt you," he said once, looking out over the campus lawn. It should have been a red flag, but instead it just made me want to understand him more. There was something magnetic about his honesty, about how he didn't try to be perfect. He carried his flaws like they were proof he was still trying. One night, we sat outside my dorm, sharing a blanket because it was too cold and neither of us wanted to say goodbye yet. The air smelled like rain. He told me he couldn't sleep without music, that he'd once driven across 3 states just to clear his head after a bad breakup. I told him about the time Ethan and I got lost hiking and ended up sleeping in the car under the stars. "You talk about him a lot," Liam said quietly. I froze. "Do I?" He nodded. "Yeah, it's okay though. I can tell he means a lot to you." I looked down at my hands, twisting the edge of the blanket. "He does. He's my best friend." Liam didn't say anything for a while. Then softly, "Sometimes best friends are just people we haven't admitted we love yet." That line hit like lightning. My breath caught, and before I could respond, he smiled faintly. Don't worry, I wasn't trying to start something, but he already had. After that night, I started noticing how my heart shifted, depending on who I was with. Around Ethan, I felt safe but restless, like living inside a memory that was too small for me now. Around Liam, I felt exposed but alive, like every moment mattered more than it should. I hated myself for comparing them, but I couldn't stop. Ava noticed before anyone else. "You're doing that thing," she said one afternoon when we were getting ready for class. "What thing?" "The thing where you overthink every guy who smiles at you." "Spill. Who's the new one?" I hesitated, then told her about Liam. Well, part of it. The late night talks, the way he listened, the sketches. I didn't mention the guilt, the confusion, or the ache that came after every interaction. Ava raised an eyebrow. "And Ethan?" I sighed. "Still Ethan." She gave me that look, the one that said she knew exactly what was happening. "Emma, you can't keep both. Sooner or later, you'll break someone's heart. Maybe even your own." I laughed it off, but her words stayed with me, because deep down, I already knew she was right. The emotional dam finally broke one rainy evening in November. Ethan showed up at my dorm unannounced, drenched from the storm. "You weren't answering your phone," he said, shaking water from his hair. "I was studying." I lied, even though my laptop was open to a playlist Liam had sent me. He looked around the room, noticed the extra mug on my desk. "Was someone here?" I hesitated. That was all the answer he needed. "Emma," he said quietly, his voice trembling just a little. "Is there something you want to tell me?" I should have told him everything. I should have been honest. But guilt and confusion tangled my words. "Ethan, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," he said. "Because I'm standing here trying to figure out when I became the person you avoid instead of talk to." Something in me cracked. "I'm not avoiding you. I don't know where my head is right now." He took a slow breath, then said the words I'd been both waiting for and terrified of hearing. "I love you, Emma. I have for a long time." The room went silent except for the rain. My heart raced. I should have felt happy, but instead I felt like I was about to drown. "I can't," I whispered. "Not right now?" He nodded, his jaw tightening, eyes glistening. "Right. Of course, not right now." And then he left. I didn't move for a long time after the door closed. I wanted to chase him, to fix it, to say something that would make it all okay. But I couldn't even understand myself anymore. Later that week, Liam and I met again. Same garden, same fading light. He saw it in my face before I said a word. "You told him," he said. "He told me," I corrected softly. Liam looked down, tracing the edge of his sketchbook. "So what happens now?" I didn't have an answer, but when he reached out and touched my hand, I didn't pull away. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just want you to know that I like you, really like you." It was the gentlest confession I'd ever heard, but it carried so much weight I could barely breathe. I should have said something, should have stopped it, but I didn't. I just sat there, letting the warmth of his hand anchor me for a moment that shouldn't have existed. That tiny choice, one small, quiet moment of not pulling away, changed everything. Because by the time I finally looked up, I realized the storm I was caught in wasn't coming from the outside anymore. It was inside me, and no matter which direction I turned, someone I cared about was going to get hurt. I wish I could tell you I made the right choice, that I followed my heart and everything fell into place like some predictable romantic movie. But the truth is, I don't even know when things started to crumble. One day I was sure of everything, of who I loved, who I trusted, what kind of person I was, and the next it was all fog. The night I finally made a decision. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, it was quiet. I remember sitting on my dorm bed, the fairy lights dim, my roommate asleep, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. My phone was in my hand, Ethan's name glowing on the screen. He had texted, "Can we talk tomorrow?" And right below that, Liam's name, "Come outside." That was it. 2 texts, 2 men, 2 roads. And me, sitting there, feeling like my chest was too small to contain my heart. I don't even know why I stood up, why I chose to go. Maybe because I was afraid if I didn't, I'd always wonder what might have happened. Liam was leaning against his car, parked under the yellow street light near the student union. He looked like something out of a dream I didn't want to wake up from. Messy hair, dark hoodie, his eyes soft but searching. When I walked up, he smiled that tired, beautiful smile that made me forget how to breathe. "Hey," he said, his voice low. "Didn't think you'd come." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, I needed to clear my head." He nodded. "Me too." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like both of us knew that after tonight, things would never be the same. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't. I admitted. He hesitated, his hand still near my cheek. Emma, I can't stop thinking about you. And that's when it broke. The dam I'd been holding in my chest cracked open. I told him everything, how confused I was, how I hated myself for feeling this way, how I didn't want to hurt anyone, least of all Ethan. Liam just listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to justify anything. He just stood there, eyes full of guilt and something that looked like pain. When I finished, he said quietly, "You don't have to choose tonight. Just be honest with yourself. That's all." Then he leaned in, just close enough that I could feel his breath, but far enough that I could walk away if I wanted to. And I didn't walk away. I kissed him. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't passion or relief. It was everything: fear, want, guilt, comfort, all tangled into one impossible moment. When we finally pulled apart, I felt both weightless and crushed, like I had done something that could never be undone. The next morning, I told Ethan, I don't even know what I expected. Maybe anger, maybe silence, but what I got was worse. He just stared at me for a long time, his jaw tight, his eyes glassy. "Was it him?" he finally asked. I couldn't even lie. "Yes." He nodded once. "Thanks for telling me." And that was it. He walked away. No shouting, no begging, no drama, just quiet devastation. That night, I cried until my chest hurt. Not just because I hurt him, but because I realized something that terrified me. I didn't even know if I made the right choice. The days after were a blur. Ethan stopped coming around. Our group chats went silent. Even my classes felt different, emptier somehow. Liam tried to be there for me. He took me out for coffee, texted good morning, checked on me. But something in me had changed. Every time he smiled, I saw Ethan's face, the way he looked at me that morning, like I'd taken something pure and crushed it underfoot. Then came the secret. It was a Friday afternoon when Liam finally told me. We were sitting by the lake, near campus, watching the sunlight dance on the water. He looked nervous, like he was rehearsing in his head. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you," he said. My stomach dropped. "What is it?" He took a breath. "Before you and I started, whatever this is, I was seeing someone." I blinked. "What?" "Her name's Alyssa. We weren't serious, it was before I met you, but I didn't tell you because I didn't think it mattered anymore." I stared at him. "So you just forgot to mention it?" "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. "It ended before you and I." "But you still talk to her, don't you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He hesitated. That tiny pause was all I needed. "Liam," I whispered, my throat tight, "are you still seeing her?" He shook his head. "No, but she's been texting me, saying she wants to talk." I haven't responded. It should have made me feel better, but it didn't. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that silence can be just as loud as lies. That night, I couldn't sleep again. My phone buzzed once, a message from Ethan. "I'm not mad at you, just hurt. But I hope you're okay." I didn't deserve his kindness. I didn't deserve anything from him. So I didn't reply. I sat there in the dark, thinking about everything, about how I'd hurt the person who'd always stood by me, for someone who was now showing cracks I didn't know how to handle. And yet, I couldn't walk away from Liam either. That's the thing about love triangles. It's not always about choosing between two people. Sometimes it's about choosing between two versions of yourself. A few days later, Ethan stopped showing up at our usual coffee spot. Even when I tried to text him, he gave short replies. I couldn't blame him. Meanwhile, Liam grew distant too. He said he was dealing with stuff. His ex, his family, classes. I wanted to be understanding, but deep down, I felt the sting of irony. I had chosen him, and now he was the one pulling away. One night, when I couldn't take the silence anymore, I went to his apartment. He opened the door, surprised. "Emma, can we talk?" He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. We talked, or tried to, but everything we said came out wrong. I told him I felt like I was losing him. He told me I was overthinking. I asked if he still loved me. He said, "I don't know what love even means right now." And that broke me. Because suddenly, I realized this wasn't the person I thought I knew. Or maybe he was, and I just never wanted to see it. The next morning, I saw Ethan on campus. He was laughing with someone, a girl from our psych class. For a second, I froze. I wanted to be happy for him. I wanted to feel relief, but all I felt was this hollow ache, like I lost something I couldn't ever get back. That night, I wrote in my journal, maybe the worst part of hurting someone isn't losing them. It's realizing you were the villain in someone else's story. Weeks passed. Things didn't magically fix themselves. Liam and I drifted apart, piece by piece. Texts became shorter, calls less frequent. Eventually, there was nothing left to say. One night, he came over and said, "I think we need space." I didn't argue, I just nodded. When he left, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I finally texted Ethan, "I'm sorry for everything." He never replied, and maybe that was the answer I needed. That summer, I went home. My parents noticed I was quieter, softer somehow. I spent a lot of time walking around the lake near our house, thinking about everything that had happened. I realized I'd spent so much time chasing love that I forgot to love myself. Ethan was stability. Liam was fire. And me, I was lost somewhere in between, trying to find meaning in the chaos I'd created. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. Just human. Because heartbreak doesn't always mean the end of something. Sometimes it's the beginning of understanding who you are when everything else falls apart. If you're reading this and you're stuck between two people, I'll tell you something I wish someone had told me. Love isn't supposed to feel like choosing between guilt and passion. It's supposed to feel like peace. And I think I'm finally ready to find that. If you've ever had your heart broken, truly broken, you know it doesn't shatter all at once. It cracks slowly. in tiny invisible places until one day you wake up and realize it's already fallen apart. When the fall semester began, I came back to campus different, not in some dramatic movie-style new me way, but quietly different. My hair was shorter, my smile softer, and the chaos inside me had gone still. After everything that happened with Ethan and Liam, I spent the summer learning how to be alone. That's not something people talk about. Enough the quiet work of rebuilding your own peace. The first few weeks were hard. I kept checking my phone out of habit, waiting for texts that never came. I'd scroll through old photos, wondering when happiness turned into regret. But somewhere between morning runs and journaling sessions, I began to understand something I hadn't before. I was addicted to being chosen. By Ethan, by Liam, by anyone who made me feel seen. And when that validation disappeared, I mistook the silence for emptiness. It wasn't emptiness, it was space. Space to grow. Space to breathe. When I came back to campus, everything looked the same, but I wasn't the same person walking through it. Ethan had a new girlfriend. I saw them one morning at the cafe near the library. She was laughing, brushing hair out of her eyes the way I used to, and he looked at her with that soft, gentle warmth that used to belong to me. For a second, I felt the old ache rise in my chest, but instead of jealousy, there was peace. He deserved someone who hadn't broken him. I didn't go up to him that day, but fate or maybe closure had other plans. A week later, I was leaving my psychology lecture when I heard someone call my name. Emma. It was Ethan. He looked surprised, almost nervous. "Hey," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. He smiled faintly. "It's been a while." "Yeah," I said softly. "It has." We stood there for a moment, surrounded by the noise of campus life laughter, footsteps, the sound of leaves crunching under boots, and it felt surreal, like we were standing on the other side of something we'd both survived. "I heard you went home for the summer," he said. "Yeah, I needed it," I admitted. "I think I needed to figure out who I was without all this." I gestured vaguely between us. He nodded. "I get that." For a second, the silence stretched comfortable this time, not painful. Then he said quietly, "I'm glad you told me the truth back then. It hurt, but I respect it now." That hit me harder than I expected, because it reminded me that even in all the mess, there had been honesty and maybe in its own strange way, love. "I'm sorry, Ethan," I said, voice trembling, "for everything, for being confused, for hurting you. You didn't deserve that." He looked down, then back up at me. "We were both figuring things out. You don't need to keep apologizing." He smiled that familiar, gentle smile, and I felt something uncoil inside me. Not love, not longing, just gratitude. We said goodbye after that. It wasn't dramatic, just a small wave, two people finally letting go of the past. But the story wasn't over yet, because a week later, Liam came back. I was sitting by the fountain near the student union, sketching in my journal when I heard that low, familiar voice. "Didn't think I'd find you here." My hand froze midline. I turned, and there he was. Same messy hair, same quiet confidence, but something in his eyes was different. Tired. Regretful. "Liam," I breathed. "Hey." For a second, I didn't know what to say. The last time we spoke, he'd asked for space, and I'd given it. Now here he was, standing in front of me, like a ghost from a chapter I thought I'd closed. "I wanted to talk," he said, stepping closer. "If that's okay." I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, sit." He sat beside me, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the water. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "You don't have to." "No," he interrupted softly. "I do. I messed things up. I wasn't honest. Not about Alyssa, not about what I was feeling. I thought I could handle it, that I could figure things out while still holding on to you, but I was selfish." His voice cracked slightly at the end, and for the first time, I saw not the confident, mysterious Liam I'd fallen for, but the boy underneath, the one who was scared of being alone, just like me. "I hurt you," he continued, "and I hate that. You didn't deserve the way I left." I stared at the water for a long time before answering. "You know what's funny?" I said quietly. "I spent months trying to figure out why everything fell apart. Was it me? Was it you? Was it just bad timing? But I think now I finally get it." He looked at me, eyes searching. "What do you mean?" "I think we met at the wrong time," I said. "You were still tangled in your past. I was still running from mine. We were both trying to find pieces of ourselves in each other, and that's not love. That's survival." He let out a shaky laugh, nodding slowly. "Yeah, maybe you're right." We sat there for a while. No words, just the sound of water and wind. Then he said, almost a whisper, "Do you ever think maybe in another time we could have worked?" I looked at him, really looked. The boy who made me laugh, made me cry, made me question everything I thought I knew about love. "Maybe," I said, "but I don't think that time is now." That night, I walked back to my dorm alone, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt right. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about who I belonged to or who might be thinking about me. I was thinking about myself, my dreams, my future, my peace. I started going to therapy again. I joined an art collective on campus. I made new friends who didn't know my history, who saw me not as the girl caught between two guys, but just Emma. And slowly, that became enough. Months later, I ran into Liam one last time at a graduation party. He was leaving for a job in Seattle. I was heading to New York for an internship. He smiled when he saw me. "You look happy." "I am," I said honestly. He nodded. "I'm glad." We hugged, not as lovers, not as what-ifs, but as two people who once mattered deeply to each other. Then he walked away. And I didn't look back. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I'll ever fully stop thinking about either of them. They were both chapters in my story. One taught me what love should feel like. The other taught me what love shouldn't cost. But now, when I think about love, it doesn't come with guilt or fear. It comes with calm, with freedom. And that's what I wish for anyone reading this, especially if you're stuck in your own version of the triangle I was in. Don't chase the person who makes your heart race. Don't cling to the one who makes you feel safe out of fear. Find the one who makes you feel whole, even if that person is you. Because sometimes the best love story isn't about choosing between two people. It's about choosing yourself. All right. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.